The next layer is considered the heart of the OSI model because of its importance, and that is the transport layer. So let's see what does the transport layer do. Once the messages as well as the channel are ready, the messages are sent through the channel. The transportation facility is provided by the layer 4 or the transport layer. So everything related to transportation of data from one node to the other node through a channel is handled by this layer. Besides the transportation, flow control of the data, the sequence of sending the messages, the sequence of receiving the messages, the addresses of the devices that are communicating, and a lot of information is handled and added by this layer. So you can say this is the most hard-working layer of the OSI model. In addition to these, defining the port numbers on which port numbers the applications are communicating, the data transmission protocols, the TCP or the UDP according to the packets, the segmentation and desegmentation of data packets on the receiver side is also handled by this layer. In short, everything related to where and how the messages will go is handled by this layer. The next layer we have is the network layer. So let's see what is the network layer. This layer is the third layer of the model, and by the way, transport layer is the layer 4. The network layer or the layer 3 of the model sits below the transport layer. This layer provides the information about the data packets that are transmitted by the transport layer. So the transport layer transports the data from one device to other device. So every information about that packet is contained in the network layer. Since the transport layer needs to know the address of the devices that are communicating, this network layer comes into play. This layer adds the IP address of the sender as well as the IP address of the receiver so that the messages can go from correct sender IP address to the correct receiver IP address. The IP address is added on this layer or the layer 3, and thus another name for IP address is the layer 3 address. So you see, since the IP address is added on the network layer or the layer 3, IP address got its other name, that is the layer 3 address, from here. So this is the concept. The IP address got its other name, that is the layer 3 address. The MAC address is a layer 2 address, and we are going to see why is that. Every information about the data packets such as the routing, switching, the use of gateways, subnetting, and everything that's related to the networking of those packets is handled by this layer. So in short, this layer focuses on sending the data packets to the desired devices using their IP addresses. The next layer is the data link layer or the layer 2 address. This layer adds another address to the data packet or the data frame that is known as the MAC address. So now you can see why the MAC address got its other name as the layer 2 address, because the MAC addresses works on the layer 2 or the data link layer. So in data link layer, the frames are added with the layer 2 address, which are known as the MAC address, and then it is sent to the upper layer, which is the network layer. Besides MAC addresses, additional information like flow control, error checks, and frame encapsulation are also done in this layer. Now besides these services, there is one point that you should note. There is a difference between what a message is termed in the layer 3 and what the message is termed in a layer 2. So in the layer 3, I am saying data packets, and data packets. But in layer 2, I am saying data frames. Remember this point. The messages, when they are working on the layer 3 or when they are held by the layer 3, those messages or those pouches of data are known as the data packets. While when these packets go to the layer 2 or they come to layer 2, these packets are termed as data frames, because data link layer works in frames instead of packets. So everything inside data link layer is seen as a frame. Therefore, every packet in this is termed as a frame. The last layer is the physical layer or the layer 1. The physical layer is the lowest layer of the OSI model, and its role is to convert the frames that are coming from the transport layer into the binary digits or bits so that the messages can be transferred in the form of signals from one device to the other device. So in simple terms, the role of the physical layer is to convert the data frames of layer 2 that is coming from the data link layer into data signals so that they can be transferred over the communication channel such as an Ethernet cable or a Wi-Fi signals, etc. Besides this layer takes care of what is known as the layout of the communication pins. In addition, other services of this layer includes the voltages, cable characteristics, what are the characteristics of the wire you are using, the frequency on which the messages are to be sent and received, etc. This layer also takes care of the transmission mode, such as using a duplex or a half duplex or a simplex channel modes. So in short, this layer focuses on the actual transmission of data in the form of signals from one node to the other node using a physical medium.